In 1940, before the United States entered World War II, a young American lad graduated from high school, and with his graduation from high school, he was offered a scholarship at Yale University. He set aside his scholarship at Yale, came north to Canada, joined our Air Force, trained as a pilot, and immediately after getting his wings, he was transferred overseas where he joined 412 Canadian Squadron flying Spitfire aircraft. In September 1941, he wrote a letter to his parents in Washington, D.C., and on the back of that letter, he hastily scribbled out the lines of his 14-line sonnet that he had written about the joys of flying in his Spitfire. The original handwritten copy of High Flight, as he called it, has been preserved and rests in the vaults of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., where it rests to this very day. In December 1941, just a few days after the infamy of Pearl Harbor, this young American lad flying a Canadian Spitfire in the skies over Europe lost his life. At the time of his tragic death, Pilot Officer John Gillespie McGee Jr. was only 19 years of age. Listen now to the poignant but uplifting words of his High Flight, which today is dedicated to all veterans and all those who serve. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air, up, up. The long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while, with silent lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
I think today's important because the Battle of Britain was a crucial moment in the Second World War when everything was going wrong. Hitler was rampant. He'd occupied Norway, he'd occupied Belgium, he was in the course of occupying France. Everything was going against Britain. And then the Luftwaffe launched a tremendous attack, which, had it succeeded, I think would have ended the war and we would have lost it. But some very, very brave pilots, including Canadian pilots, 103 Canadian pilots fought in the war, many of them very young men, threw themselves into that battle. They were flying Spitfires. The average life expectancy during that period in 1940 was only 4 weeks. So they died in great numbers, but they fought valiantly, and it was right over the heads of the people. They could see it happening in the sky above them, and it gave people tremendous heart, and it was really the turning point in the war, and that's why we should remember it.
When I graduated in Canada and went over as an air gunner, served on the Lancasters and mid-upper gunner, did 30 ops and then instructed and finally came home. but one of the lucky ones.
I think it's important for the children to understand something of our history, and particularly as mentioned in the keynote speech, that what a close thing it was in World War II, how we could have lost our freedom.